At 6:47 a.m. on September 3rd, 2024, FBI Special Agent Christy Curtis watched Linda Sun's $4.1 million mansion in Manhasset, New York, through surveillance cameras. 41 years old, former Deputy Chief of Staff to Governor Kathy Hochul, 13 years, working for two New York governors. Sun had driven a 2024 Ferrari to work on a $145,000 state salary. In 13 minutes, FBI agents would surround her home with an arrest warrant. Her neighbors thought she'd married into wealth. The FBI knew better. She'd sold New York state policy to the Chinese Communist Party. The payments included millions in wire transfers, luxury real estate, and Nanjing-style salted ducks prepared by a Chinese consulate chef's personal kitchen. At least one case, Taiwan representatives blocked from meeting the governor. Democratic principles betrayed for duck dinners and sports cars. The FBI had been watching for months. They knew about the mansion, the Ferrari, the $2.1 million Honolulu condo, the wire transfers totaling millions of dollars routed through her husband's seafood business, all purchased on a government salary that couldn't afford a studio apartment in Manhattan. Someone had been paying Linda Sun, and that someone wore a badge from the People's Republic of China. Sun had 13 minutes of freedom left. She didn't know the game was over. For over a decade, American democracy had a problem it didn't know about. High-level state officials making decisions about Taiwan, about Chinese trade delegations, about which messages governors would send to Beijing. Those decisions weren't being made in Albany. They were being directed from the Chinese consulate in New York by officials who answered to the Chinese Communist Party, through an operative who sat in the governor's office, who edited the governor's speeches, who controlled access to the governor's calendar. Linda Sun had the keys to New York state policy, and she'd handed copies to Beijing. The pattern was invisible for years. Taiwan officials trying to meet with New York leadership would get blocked at the staff level. Chinese government delegations would get VIP treatment and official proclamations without proper authorization. Messages about sensitive China issues would get softened before reaching the governor's desk. Nobody questioned it. Sun was the deputy chief of staff, the person who made those decisions, the gatekeeper, the one everyone trusted. Chinese American, spoke Mandarin fluently, perfect for community outreach, perfect for liaison work with Chinese organizations, perfect cover for an influence operation. Between 2012 and 2024, Sun worked her way up through New York state government, started under Governor Andrew Cuomo, became Deputy Chief Diversity Officer, then moved to Governor Kathy Hochul's administration, Deputy Chief of Staff, one of the most powerful unelected positions in state government. She controlled what the governor saw, what the governor said, who the governor met. 13 years of trust, 13 years of access, 13 years of betrayal. If you want to see how the FBI finally caught Linda Sun after more than a decade of selling state influence, hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to show this story to more people who need to understand how foreign influence operations work at the state level. And trust me, what the FBI found in her bank accounts will shock you. Born in Nanjing, China in 1983, the city famous for salted duck, that detail matters. Linda Sun moved to America with her parents at age 5, naturalized citizen, grew up in the United States, graduated from Barnard College in 2006 with a degree in political science. Columbia University master's degree in education in 2009. Smart, ambitious, spoke perfect English with no accent, also spoke fluent Mandarin, trilingual actually, English, Mandarin, French. The resume looked perfect for government work involving international relations, especially China relations. New York State had trade relationships with China worth billions, cultural exchanges, business delegations. Someone who understood both cultures would be invaluable, someone who could translate not just language, but context. Navigate the complex protocols of Chinese officialdom while understanding American democratic processes. Linda Sun appeared to be exactly what New York needed. Beijing thought so too, but for different reasons. Sun started in New York state government in 2012. Low-level positions at first, community liaison work, Asian American outreach, the jobs that required cultural competency and language skills. She was good at it, organized, efficient, politically savvy, understood how to navigate bureaucracy, how to build relationships, how to make herself indispensable. By 2018, she'd risen to Deputy Chief Diversity Officer under Governor Cuomo. By 2020, when Kathy Hochul became governor, Sun moved into the executive chamber, Deputy Chief of Staff. The position gave her access to everything: policy discussions, scheduling, communications. She reviewed documents before they reached the governor. She prepared briefing materials. She attended meetings with foreign delegations. She had the governor's calendar. And more importantly, she had the governor's ear. What nobody in Albany knew, Sun had another job, unpaid, unregistered, undisclosed, foreign agent for the People's Republic of China and the Chinese Communist Party. She'd been recruited. The indictment doesn't say exactly when, but the pattern of behavior started early, probably years before she reached her peak influence. Classic intelligence recruitment: find someone with potential, cultivate the relationship, provide small favors, build trust, wait for them to rise, then activate. By the time Sun had real power in the governor's office, the relationship was established. She knew who she was working for. She knew what they wanted, and she knew what they'd pay. The first betrayals were small. Testing: a Taiwanese representative wants to meet the governor. Sun blocks it at the staff level. The meeting never happens. The governor never knows the request existed. Beijing learns their operative can control access. A Chinese delegation visits New York. Sun arranges meetings with high-level state officials, provides invitation letters from the governor's office, letters that help the Chinese officials get visas to enter the United States, letters Sun wasn't authorized to write, letters that contained false statements in immigration documents, but the Chinese delegation gets their meetings, gets their photo opportunities, gets their legitimacy, and Sun gets a message: the Chinese consulate is pleased. Keep it up, there will be rewards. The rewards started modestly: travel benefits, tickets to concerts and events, luxury meals, the kind of things that seemed like normal relationship building in international relations. But they escalated. Sun's husband, Chris Hu, ran a seafood business. Suddenly that business started getting contracts from China, wire transfers from companies in Qingdao, hundreds of thousands of dollars at first, then millions. The money flowed through Hu's business accounts. Legitimate-looking business transactions. Except the business didn't earn that kind of money through normal seafood sales. The transactions were payments, kickbacks, compensation for Sun's work as an unregistered foreign agent, money laundering disguised as commerce. In 2020, Sun provided a concrete service that showed how deep the betrayal went. COVID-19 had just hit. New York State needed personal protective equipment, masks, gowns, ventilators. The state was buying in bulk, making emergency purchases worth millions. Sun allegedly helped steer some of those contracts. Her husband's business connections in China suddenly became very valuable. The business could access PPE suppliers, could get products when everyone else was scrambling. Except Sun and Hu allegedly received kickbacks from those transactions, profiting from a pandemic, using her government position to enrich her family while New Yorkers died waiting for protective equipment. The exact amounts are still being calculated at trial, but prosecutors say the couple made millions from the PPE scheme alone. With the money came the lifestyle, and the lifestyle became impossible to hide. In 2022, Sun and Hu purchased a mansion in Manhasset, Long Island. Purchase price: $4.1 million paid in cash, no mortgage, on a government salary of $145,000 per year. The house sits on a quiet street in one of Long Island's wealthiest communities. 7 bedrooms, waterfront views, the kind of home that screams money. Sun told colleagues she'd received family help with the purchase. An inheritance, maybe. People nodded. Seemed plausible. Asian families sometimes pool resources to buy real estate. Nobody questioned it too closely. Nobody wanted to appear culturally insensitive by asking where the money really came from. But the FBI was starting to notice. They just didn't know about Sun yet. What they noticed was a pattern. Chinese intelligence operations targeting state and local governments, not just federal agencies. States had power too, over infrastructure, over trade relationships, over cultural and educational exchanges. The FBI had been tracking Chinese influence operations for years. But this was something new. Penetration at the state executive level. Direct access to a governor's decision-making process. When the pattern became clear, the FBI opened an investigation. The breakthrough came from financial analysis, standard counterintelligence work, look at lifestyle versus income, find the mismatch. Someone in the New York state government was living way beyond their means. Multiple properties, luxury vehicles, cash purchases, wire transfers from China. The FBI started building a list, cross-referencing financial data with government access. Who had the money? Who had the access? Who had connections to Chinese government entities? Linda Sun's name rose to the top, and once they focused on her, the case built quickly. January 2024, FBI surveillance teams begin 24/7 monitoring of Linda Sun. They watch her drive to work in the 2024 Ferrari, watch her stop at her husband's wine store in Queens, watch her attend dinners at expensive restaurants, watch her meet with individuals the FBI identifies as Chinese consulate officials. They don't have probable cause for an arrest yet, but they're building it. Phone records, bank records, emails, travel records. They're looking for the direct evidence, the smoking gun, the proof that Sun acted as a directed agent, not just accepted benefits, but took orders, shaped policy, betrayed her oath for money. March 2024, the FBI interviews witnesses, current and former New York State employees. Did anyone notice anything unusual about Sun's work, her decisions, her communications? The answers come back consistent. Sun was territorial about China-related issues. She insisted on reviewing all documents related to Chinese delegations. She controlled access to meetings with Chinese officials. She edited messages from the governor's office to soften criticism of China. She blocked Taiwan representatives systematically, not occasionally, every single time. One former staffer remembers a Taiwanese official trying for months to get a meeting with the governor, kept getting told the schedule was full, then watched a Chinese Communist Party delegation get a meeting scheduled within days of requesting one. The staffer thought it was odd, mentioned it to Sun. Sun explained it was about diplomatic protocol. The staffer didn't push. Sun was the expert, the one who understood these relationships, the one with the governor's trust. May 2024, the FBI executes search warrants on Sun and Hu's financial records. What they find is staggering. Since 2018, millions of dollars had flowed through Hu's business accounts. Wire transfers from Chinese companies, large cash deposits, funds immediately transferred to purchase real estate. The $4.1 million Manhasset mansion, a $2.1 million condominium in Honolulu, Hawaii, the 2024 Ferrari, a Mercedes, a BMW, luxury watches, high-end jewelry. The couple had spent millions on assets, on a combined income that couldn't support a fraction of that spending. The financial analysis showed clear money laundering, funds coming from China, disguised as business transactions, used to purchase luxury goods and real estate, classic tradecraft, and absolutely illegal. But the FBI wanted more. Financial crimes were one thing. The real case was about foreign influence, about an unregistered foreign agent in a position of power. They needed evidence of direction, proof that Sun took orders from Chinese officials, that she acted to advance Chinese government interests, that she knew she was violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. They needed communications, documents, testimony, and they were about to get it. July 2024. The FBI raids Sun and Hu's Manhasset mansion. No arrest yet, just a search. looking for documents, computers, phones, evidence of communication with Chinese officials. The raid happens in the morning. Sun is at work when agents arrive. Hu is home. He watches agents carry out boxes, hard drives, devices, papers. Everything gets photographed, cataloged, seized. The neighbors watch, wonder what's happening. Someone calls the local news. By evening, reporters are asking questions. The New York State government issues a statement. Linda Sun is no longer employed. She left earlier this year. No details provided. But people who work in Albany start connecting dots. The departure had been quiet. No announcement, no farewell party. Just gone one day. Now the FBI is raiding her house. Something big is happening. Inside the seized computers, the FBI finds exactly what they need. Emails between Sun and Chinese consulate officials, discussing which Taiwanese representatives to block, which messages to alter, which meetings to arrange. The emails use careful language. Nothing says, "I am acting as your agent." But the pattern is unmistakable. Chinese official requests action. Sun confirms she'll handle it. Sun reports back on results. Chinese official expresses satisfaction, sometimes mentions arrangements being made. The arrangements turn out to be the payments to Hu's business, thousands of dollars transferred within days of Sun completing a requested task. The correlation is too consistent to be coincidental. This is a directed operation. Sun is taking orders, getting paid, violating her oath, betraying her position, working for a foreign government while pretending to work for New York. And then there are the ducks. The prosecutors would later describe this detail at trial because it's both bizarre and revealing. High-ranking Chinese consulate official has a personal chef. The chef makes traditional Nanjing-style salted ducks, a delicacy. Expensive. Time-consuming to prepare correctly. The official has his chef prepare these ducks. Has them delivered to Sun's parents' residence in New York. Multiple deliveries over multiple years. The ducks are gifts. Payment in kind. The kind of thing that seems trivial until you understand what it represents. In Chinese culture, sending such gifts signals a relationship, an obligation, a connection that goes beyond formal channels. The Chinese official is treating Sun like family, like someone in the network, someone who belongs, someone who's being taken care of. And Sun accepts, never discloses these gifts to the state government, never reports the relationship, keeps taking the ducks, keeps taking the money, keeps doing the work. August 2024, the FBI presents their findings to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. The evidence is overwhelming. Financial records showing millions in payments, communications showing directed activity, witnesses describing Sun's systematic blocking of Taiwan and favoring of Chinese government interests. Assets purchased far beyond legitimate income, failure to register as a foreign agent, visa fraud in the invitation letters, money laundering in the real estate purchases, conspiracy charges for Hu's role in the financial schemes, the prosecutors approve charges, the grand jury returns an indictment. All that remains is the arrest. September 3, 2024, 7:00 a.m., FBI agents surround the Manhasset mansion. Special Agent Curtis knocks on the door. Sun answers. She's dressed for work. About to leave for a scheduled meeting in Albany. Curtis identifies herself, shows the warrant. Linda Sun, you're under arrest for acting as an unregistered foreign agent of the People's Republic of China. Sun's face goes blank. No emotion, no surprise. Just a flat stare. She's been expecting this since the July raid, maybe longer. She knows what they found. She knows the evidence is real. She says nothing, invokes her right to remain attorney. The agents take her into custody. Simultaneously, other agents arrest Chris Hu at his wine store in Queens. By 9:00 a.m., both are in federal custody. By noon, the indictment is unsealed. The story hits the news. Ex-aide to 2 New York governors arrested as Chinese agent. The details start leaking. The mansion, the Ferrari, the millions, the betrayal. Governor Hochul issues a statement. I am absolutely shocked and disturbed by these allegations. When this employee left state service in 2023, we had concerns about misconduct and immediately reported it to the authorities. I have zero tolerance for any form of corruption. Translation: they knew something was wrong. They fired her. They cooperated with the investigation. The governor is furious, blindsided, betrayed. Someone she trusted had been working for China, had been editing her statements, blocking her meetings, shaping her policy. How many decisions had been influenced? How many times had the Chinese government gotten what they wanted because their operative controlled access to the governor? The damage assessment begins. At 2:00 p.m., Sun and Hu appear in Brooklyn federal court before Magistrate Judge Peggy Kuo for arraignment. The charges are read: conspiracy to violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act, acting as an unregistered foreign agent, visa fraud, alien smuggling, money laundering conspiracy. For Hu, additional charges: conspiracy to commit bank fraud and misuse of identification. Combined, the charges carry decades in federal prison. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Alexander Solomon, argues for detention, flight risk, access to resources, ties to China. The defense counters: Sun and Hu have children. Roots in the community. They surrendered peacefully. They're not going anywhere. Judge Kuo sets bail: $1.5 million bond for Sun, $500,000 for Hu, secured by property. Conditions include surrender of passports, GPS monitoring, and restriction to the Eastern District of New York. Both defendants plead not guilty. They're released the same day. The case moves to pretrial, discovery, motions. The government turns over evidence: thousands of pages of financial records, emails, surveillance photos, witness statements. The defense begins building their response, and their strategy becomes clear from the filings. This isn't espionage. This is politics as usual. Cultural differences, relationship building, the kind of thing that happens in government all the time. The gifts weren't bribes. They were normal in Chinese culture. The money to Hu's business was legitimate trade. The meetings and blocked access were Sun doing her job, making decisions about scheduling and protocol. The government is criminalizing normal government work and normal business relationships because Sun is Chinese American. The defense is crying discrimination. June 26, 2025. The government files a superseding indictment. New charges: conspiracy to defraud the United States in connection with the PPE scheme. Allegedly, Sun and Hu accepted kickbacks from COVID mask suppliers, steered state contracts to companies that paid them, made millions while New York faced a public health emergency. The case grows larger. The stakes grow higher. The trial date is set for November 2025. November 12, 2025, Brooklyn Federal Courthouse, United States, says Linda Sun and Christopher Hu. The trial begins. Judge Brian Cogan presiding. The jury has been selected: 12 jurors, 6 alternates. They're about to hear a case about betrayal at the highest levels of state government. Assistant U.S. Attorney Amanda Shami stands to deliver the government's opening statement. She walks to the podium, looks at the jury, points at Linda Sun sitting at the defense table, and says the words that will define the case. Her loyalty was for sale, and the Chinese government was willing to pay Linda Sun. Linda Sun was for sale. Shami lays out the government's case. 13 years of deception. Millions in payments. Systematic blocking of Taiwan, systematic favoring of China, the mansion, the Ferrari, the condo, the wire transfers, the salted ducks, the PPE kickbacks. She tells the jury this is a case about greed and betrayal, about someone who took an oath to serve New York and broke it for money, about someone who pretended to work for the governor while actually working for Beijing, about someone who sold access and influence to a foreign power and got rich doing it. Sun's defense attorney, Seth Ducharme, counters with a different narrative. Sun was doing her job. The job required building relationships with Chinese officials, required understanding Chinese culture and protocol, required accepting gestures that showed respect, and built trust. The money to Hu's business was legitimate trade. He ran a seafood import business. Chinese companies paid for seafood. That's how business works. The real estate purchases were funded by legitimate business profits and family contributions. The government is taking normal activity and calling it espionage because Sun is Chinese American. This is profiling. This is discrimination. Linda Sun did what she was hired to do: help New York build relationships with the Chinese community and with Chinese government entities. She did it well, and now she's being prosecuted for it. The trial is expected to last 3 weeks. The government will call dozens of witnesses, current and former New York State employees, FBI agents, financial analysts, immigration officials. They'll present thousands of pages of financial records, hundreds of emails, surveillance photos and videos. They'll show the jury exactly how much money flowed from China to whose accounts, exactly how that money was used to buy luxury assets, exactly how Sun blocked Taiwan representatives and favored Chinese delegations, exactly how the invitation letters violated immigration law. The evidence mountain is enormous. The government spent 18 months building this case. They have receipts, literally, receipts for every asset purchase, records for every wire transfer, emails for every blocked meeting. The financial paper trail alone could bury Sun. The defense has a harder road. They need to explain the money, need to explain the emails, need to explain why Sun never registered as a foreign agent if this was all legitimate government work, need to explain why she never disclosed the gifts and benefits, need to explain the extraordinary wealth on a government salary. Their strategy relies on cultural context, on arguing that the jury doesn't understand how Chinese business and diplomatic relationships work, on claiming that everything Sun did was either part of her job duties or normal relationship building in Chinese culture, and on raising reasonable doubt about whether Sun actually took direction from Chinese officials or was just doing what she thought was best for New York. The prosecutors know their case is strong. The defense knows it's an uphill battle. The judge has already ruled against the defense on key motions, blocked them from using certain evidence, limited what they can argue. The defense wanted to claim selective prosecution, wanted to show other government employees who had similar relationships with foreign entities but weren't prosecuted. The judge said no. The defense wanted to introduce evidence about Chinese cultural norms to explain the gifts and business practices. The judge limited that severely, said the jury would hear expert testimony but within strict boundaries. The defense is working with one hand tied behind their back. As the trial proceeds through November 2025, certain facts become undeniable. The numbers, the assets, the timeline. Sun and Hu spent more than $7 million on real estate alone. They spent hundreds of thousands on luxury vehicles. They lived a lifestyle requiring multiple millions per year in income. Sun's government salary, $145,000. Hu's seafood business, legitimate revenue. According to tax returns, less than $200,000 per year. Combined legitimate income, under $350,000. Actual spending, multiple millions. The math doesn't work. The defense tries to explain it as family money, business profits not fully reported, loans. The prosecutors show wire transfers directly from Chinese accounts to Hu's business. Show those transfers correlating exactly with dates Sun completed tasks requested by Chinese officials. Show the money immediately flowing to purchase luxury assets. The jury sees the pattern. The numbers tell a story, and that story is about payments for services rendered, about kickbacks, about corruption. The human cost gets attention too. Taiwan representatives testifying about being systematically blocked, describing months of trying to get meetings with New York leadership, being told the calendar was full, watching Chinese Communist Party officials get meetings scheduled immediately, feeling like second-class representatives. One Taiwanese official tears up on the stand, talks about feeling betrayed, about thinking Sun was helping because she understood Asian culture, about discovering she was actually working against Taiwan, against democracy, for the Chinese Communist Party. The testimony is powerful, personal. It shows this wasn't just financial fraud, it was betrayal of values, of people, of Democratic allies. The testimony about the COVID PPE scheme is devastating. New York State procurement officials testifying about emergency purchases in 2020, about desperate need for masks and gowns, about Sun recommending certain suppliers, about those suppliers having connections through Hughes' business, about contracts worth millions going to those companies, then forensic accountants testifying about kickback payments, wire transfers from the supply companies to accounts controlled by who, payments disguised as business transactions but actually kickbacks. The prosecutors do the math for the jury, show exactly how much Sun and who made from the PPE scheme. Nearly $2 million in kickbacks, while New Yorkers died from COVID, while healthcare workers begged for protective equipment. Sun and who were profiting, getting rich off a pandemic. The jury hears it all, sees the bank records. The evidence is overwhelming. By the third week of trial, the defense has fought hard but made little headway. They've tried to explain the money, tried to contextualize the relationships, tried to argue cultural misunderstanding, but the evidence keeps mounting. The prosecutors are methodical. Present document after document, wire transfer after wire transfer, email after email. The pattern is undeniable. Sun took actions. Chinese officials were pleased. Money flowed to who? Assets were purchased. Repeat. Over and over for years. Millions of dollars. Hundreds of acts. A systematic operation. The defense's cultural context arguments can't overcome the sheer volume of evidence, the systematic nature of it, the concealment. If this was legitimate, why hide it? Why not register as a foreign agent? Why not disclose the gifts? Why not report the business relationships? The answers are obvious. Because Sun knew it was wrong, knew it was illegal, did it anyway, for the money. As of November 13th, 2025, the trial continues. The government has rested its case. The defense is presenting its case in chief, calling character witnesses, trying to humanize Sun, show her as a dedicated public servant, someone who believes she was helping New York, who made mistakes maybe but didn't intend to violate the law. The defense knows they're losing. The best hope now is one or two jurors who refuse to convict. A hung jury, a mistrial, a chance to negotiate a plea deal before retrial. Because the evidence is too strong for acquittal. The jury has seen too much, heard too much. The numbers don't lie. The emails don't lie. The wire transfers don't lie. When the jury deliberates, they'll have to answer simple questions. Did Linda Sun act as an agent of the Chinese government? Yes. The evidence is overwhelming. Did she fail to register as a foreign agent? Yes. She never registered. Did she know she was required to register? Yes. She's educated, sophisticated, worked in government for 13 years. Did she accept payments for her actions? Yes. Millions of dollars. Did she and who launder that money? Yes. The real estate purchases prove it. Did they defraud the United States in the PPE scheme? Yes. The kickbacks are documented. The questions are straightforward. The answers are clear. Linda Sun is guilty. The only question is what the sentence will be. The charges carry serious time. Conspiracy to violate FARA, up to 5 years. Acting as an unregistered foreign agent, up to 10 years. Visa fraud, up to 10 years per count. Money laundering conspiracy, up to 20 years. The PPE fraud charges, another 20 years. Combined maximum, life in federal prison. Realistically, the sentencing guidelines will calculate somewhere between 15 and 30 years. Sun is 42 years old. A 15-year sentence means she's 57 when released. 30 years means she's 72. Either way, her life as she knew it is over. The mansion will be seized. The Ferrari, the condo, everything purchased with criminal proceeds gets forfeited. The government has already filed forfeiture claims. Sun and who will lose everything. The luxury lifestyle ends. Federal prison begins. Who faces similar exposure. He's charged with money laundering conspiracy, bank fraud conspiracy, and misuse of identification. The evidence against him is almost as strong as against Sun. He ran the accounts, made the transfers, purchased the assets, used fake identities to open bank accounts and hide the money flow. He knew where the money came from, knew it was illegal, helped launder it, made millions doing it. His sentencing range is slightly lower than Sun's, maybe 10 to 25 years, but still decades in federal prison. Their children will grow up with both parents incarcerated, the family destroyed by greed. The case has implications beyond Sun and Hu. It exposes Chinese influence operations at the state level, shows how Beijing targets not just federal officials but state governments, governors, state agencies, because states have power too, over infrastructure, over trade, over education, over what messages get sent to Chinese communities in America. The FBI is now investigating other state governments, looking for similar patterns, other Linda Suns in other capitals, other influence operations. The counterintelligence community calls this the new battlefield. Not nation-states directly, but subnational entities, state governments, local governments, universities, companies, all targets for foreign influence operations. And China is aggressive, systematic, patient. They recruit, they cultivate, they wait, and then they activate. What motivates someone like Linda Sun? The prosecutors say greed, pure and simple. She wanted the mansion, the Ferrari, the luxury lifestyle, and she was willing to betray her oath to get it. The defense says culture, misunderstanding, normal relationship building taken out of context. The truth is probably more complex. Sun likely believes she was helping New York, building bridges to China, facilitating trade and cultural exchanges, but she also took the money, millions of dollars. You don't take millions if you think you're just doing your job. You take millions because you know you're being paid for something extra, something you're not supposed to do, something illegal, Sun knew, and she did it anyway. That's the betrayal. Not that she worked with Chinese officials, that's part of government work, but that she worked for them, took their orders, accepted their payments, put their interests ahead of New York's, ahead of America's, ahead of her oath. The Taiwan representatives she blocked have a perspective. They see Sun as someone who betrayed both her country and her heritage. Chinese American, should understand what authoritarian communism means, should value democracy, should support Taiwan, a democratic island standing against Chinese aggression. Instead, Sun worked for Beijing, against Taiwan, against democracy, for money. That makes the betrayal personal, cultural, not just legal, but moral. Sun had choices. She came from an immigrant family that fled communist China, that sought freedom in America, that achieved success because America gave opportunity, and Sun repaid that by working for the Chinese Communist Party, by helping them extend influence into American government, by selling access to American democracy. The irony is bitter, the betrayal profound. Now Linda Sun sits in Brooklyn federal court watching her life end, watching the jury take notes, watching the evidence pile up, knowing she's going to be convicted, knowing she's going to prison. The Ferrari is already seized. The mansion will be next. The condo in Hawaii, everything. Gone. The luxury lifestyle that seemed so important, that drove her to betray her oath, all gone. What remains? Federal prison. Years of it. Maybe decades. And a legacy as a traitor, as someone who sold New York to China for duck dinners and real estate. That's what Linda Sun will be remembered for. Not her education, not her public service career, but her betrayal, her greed, her choice to put money ahead of country. If this story mattered to you, do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube's algorithm to show this story to more people. Stories like this don't get told unless people like you make them visible. Hit subscribe and click the notification bell. We're pulling stories like this from federal court records, FBI investigations, and ongoing trials every single week. Real betrayals, real consequences, real people who paid the price for someone else's greed. Drop a comment right now. Tell me where you're watching from. If you work in government or law enforcement, if you have Chinese American family, and what you think about this case, or just type "never forget" so we know you're here. You're not just a viewer. You're part of making sure Linda Sun's betrayal is remembered. You're part of making sure the next Linda Sun thinks twice before selling access to a foreign power. Our community is strong, from dozens of countries. Every single one of you matters. One more thing, share this video. Text it to someone you know who cares about foreign influence operations. Post it on Facebook, tweet it, whatever. These stories deserve a bigger audience than they get. Linda Sun betrayed 2 governors, blocked Democratic allies, made millions from Chinese government payments, and did it all while pretending to serve New York. That story needs to be told. You're helping us tell it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure betrayals like Linda Sun's don't stay hidden. These weren't just violations of law. They were violations of trust, of democratic values, of everything that makes American government different from authoritarian regimes. You're helping us defend those values. See you in the next story.